just hear gunshots and you're like army crawling up.
I just kept thinking over and over and over, I'm gonna die.
I still can't even grasp it. Like, it comes in waves.
A former graduate student goes on a shooting rampage at Northern Illinois University. 7 people are now confirmed dead, including the gunman.
At 3:06 p.m., a quiet lecture hall exploded into chaos. Within seconds, students were running, bleeding, screaming, and no one knew why. The man who walked in wasn't a stranger. He had once sat in those very same seats. He was smart, polite, a model student. So what pushed him to come back with a shotgun? What you're about to hear isn't just a timeline. It's a chilling descent into a disturbed mind. The missed warning signs and the lives forever altered in just 170 seconds. Stay with me, because behind every headline, there's a story we were never told. He was the last person you'd expect to do something like this. That's what people always say. But in Steven Kazmierczak's case, it was disturbingly true. Born in 1980, Steven Kazmierczak wasn't a troublemaker. He wasn't antisocial. He wasn't failing school or constantly in fights. In fact, he was the opposite. At Northern Illinois University, Steven was known as an intelligent and respectful student. Professors liked him. Classmates barely noticed him. He was quiet, punctual, polite. He even won an award from the university's criminal justice program. But underneath that calm academic surface, Steven was drowning, and no one knew. Behind his academic accolades was a long and complex history of mental illness. Diagnosed in his teens with schizoaffective disorder and anxiety, he had been in and out of psychiatric treatment facilities. His parents described periods of intense emotional breakdowns, some involving self-harm. At times, he'd disappear into silence for days, but over the years, he became adept at hiding it. By the time he enrolled at NIU, he had carefully crafted the image of a model student. He was even studying criminal behavior. Think about that. He was writing about the very type of crime he would later commit. In one research paper, he examined inmates who engaged in self-mutilation. He co-authored it with a professor and presented it at academic conferences. Nobody saw this coming because nobody really saw him. By 2008, Steven had transferred to the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign for graduate studies. His girlfriend at the time described him as sweet, loving, but also emotionally distant. He had stopped taking his psychiatric medication. He was falling apart again, but in silence. Then came the warning signs. A few weeks before the shooting, Steven bought several firearms legally. He also began purchasing ammunition online. He stopped attending his classes. He sent his girlfriend a package, a gun holster, ammunition, a textbook on serial killers, and a goodbye note. But it was already too late. On February 14th, Steven returned to Northern Illinois University, not to visit professors, not to see friends. He returned with a duffel bag, a shotgun, and 3 handguns.
You just hear gunshots and you're like army crawling up.
I just kept thinking over and over and over, I'm gonna die.
I still can't even grasp it. Like, it comes in waves.
And what happened next would shatter the illusion forever. February 14th, 2008, Valentine's Day, a day meant for love, laughter, and connection. But inside Cole Hall at Northern Illinois University, Room 101 was filled with something else entirely: quiet focus. Around 150 students were seated in a large lecture hall, listening to a lecture on ocean science. Some were taking notes, others staring off, daydreaming about their plans for the evening. A few were texting under their desks. What they didn't know was that death was walking toward them. At 3:06 p.m., Steven Kazmierczak walked onto campus, blending in with the students. He wore a dark hoodie, jeans, and a blank expression. Slung across his back was a duffel bag, and inside it, hell. He calmly entered Cole Hall, a building he had spent countless hours in as a student just a year earlier. This wasn't a random choice. This was personal. He entered through a rear door near the stage of the lecture hall. The professor, startled, paused as Steven stepped forward. And then, without a word, he pulled out a shotgun. Boom. The first shot was deafening. The professor dove behind the podium. Students froze, stunned, confused, unsure if this was a prank, a drill, or some twisted performance. But then came the second shot. Then the third. Panic erupted, screaming, running, tripping over chairs. Some students dove to the floor, others tried to crawl to the exits. A few were frozen in place, paralyzed by fear. Steven moved deliberately, firing at students in the front rows, methodically switching weapons between shots. A shotgun, a Glock, a Sig Sauer, a .22 caliber pistol. He reloaded as he moved across the stage, firing into the chaos. 5 students would never make it out alive. 17 others would be injured. One student, who was shot in the chest, later described the surreal horror. "I thought I was going to die. I saw blood everywhere. People screaming, trying to break out the back doors. He just kept shooting." Some students managed to escape through side exits. Others hid behind seats or played dead. Campus police were called immediately. Officers arrived within minutes, but it was already too late. At 3:09 p.m., just 3 minutes after the first shot, Steven Kazmierczak turned the final gun on himself and ended his life on stage. It was over, but the echoes of those 3 minutes would never fade.
This is Chicago's very own WGN News at noon.
They did nothing wrong. They were just going to school, what they should be doing, and they had to pay with it for their lives. Shouldn't have to go through that.
Students and faculty at Northern Illinois University still in shock this noon hour, the day after this man, 27-year-old Steven Kazmierczak, opened fire in a classroom, killing 5 people before taking his own life. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Tom Negative.
And I'm Dina Bair. We have several live reports this noon covering the very latest on the devastating shootings at NIU. We now know more details about the shooter and his past. The victims have all been identified, and reaction is pouring in on campus and throughout the nation. We begin our coverage with WGN's Marcella Raymond. She's live in DeKalb. Marcella.
Dina, good afternoon. Steven Kazmierczak may have been planning this shooting rampage for weeks. On February 9th, he bought guns in Champaign, where he currently goes to U of I, and then he traveled 170 miles to DeKalb, where he opened fire on a group of students that he didn't even know.
The fact is, we had one individual that obviously had some problems, that came to our campus and actually engaged in a serious act of violence.
27-year-old Steven Kazmierczak parked his car near Cole Hall and brought in an arsenal, 3 handguns and a shotgun. The shotgun and one of the handguns, a Glock 9mm, were bought legally in Champaign and picked up 6 days ago.
He carried the shotgun in a guitar case. He had a coat on over top of the belt that carried the weapons and the ammunition that he had, so no one would have seen that.
48 casings and 6 shotgun shells were found. We know the shotgun was reloaded. NIU police responded within seconds of the 911 calls.
We had a plan in place for this sort of thing. Our university police had practiced that plan. They showed that yesterday in the speed and the professionalism of that response.
According to Kazmierczak's family, the 27-year-old had stopped taking some type of medication and had been acting erratic in the past few weeks. Police would not elaborate on what medication it was or what it was for. Kazmierczak, a sociology grad student while at Northern last spring, was an excellent student, winning high accolades from professors and peers alike. He left no note or reason as to why he would go on a shooting spree like this.
I would like to know more. I'd like to know if there's a reason, but, what good reason could there be for someone doing something like this?
And the really sad thing here is that we may never know exactly what prompted him to come here and kill 5 students, I should say. Autopsies being done on those 5 student victims right now, as well as the gunman. I'm live in DeKalb. Marcella Raymond, WGN News.
Marcella, as always, great reporting. And as Marcella points out, we are learning more about the gunman at this hour. Information is coming into us about 27-year-old Steven Kazmierczak. We know he lived in this apartment building at the University of Illinois in Champaign-Urbana at 2108 White Street. Now, Champaign is where authorities say he legally bought 2 of the 4 weapons used in the shooting rampage at NIU. Marcella was talking about this as well. He was working on a master's in sociology there after graduating from NIU. We do know Steven was on medication and had stopped taking it. Authorities don't know what he was taking it for or why he stopped. We did catch up with his father in Florida, who did not want to talk to reporters.
Please leave me alone and don't say nothing to me and no comment. Okay? I appreciate that. It's a very hard time. I'm on diabetic and I don't want to take going to a new
You can scarcely imagine what a difficult time it is for that man. WGN does have a crew in Elk Grove Village right now where the gunman grew up, but so far we're having difficulty finding people who want to talk about Steven Kazmierczak.
This morning I spoke to the president of Northern Illinois University. I told the president that a lot of folks today will be praying for the families of the victims and for the Northern Illinois University community. Obviously a tragic situation on that campus, and I ask our fellow citizens to offer their blessings of comfort and blessings of strength.
In tragedies like this, the media often focuses on the numbers. 5 dead, 17 injured. But those weren't just numbers. They were names. They were people with dreams, passions, families, and futures that never got to happen. 1. Gail Dabowski, age 20. Gail was a devoted daughter, a singer, a churchgoer. She was studying anthropology and was known for her kindness and compassion. Friends described her as soft-spoken, always willing to lend a hand or sit and listen when someone needed support. She sang in her church choir and was deeply involved in her faith. She volunteered often. She believed in helping others, in making the world a better place. She died sitting in class, probably never seeing it coming. 2nd, Juliana Gahant, age 32. Juliana was a military veteran. She had served in the Army and then turned to education. Her new mission was to teach and inspire young minds. She was pursuing a teaching degree at NIU and was excited to start her second career. Friends remember her resilience, her warm smile, and the way she brought calm to those around her. She had already lived a full life and was ready to start another. 3. Ryan Mace, age 19. Ryan was a psychology major, fascinated by the human mind and driven to understand others. She was an only child, her parents' pride and joy. Her mother said she was a brilliant, thoughtful young woman who always thought of others before herself. She wanted to be a counselor, to help people. In a chilling twist, her dream of saving lives was cut short by someone whose own mind had turned against him. 4. Catalina Garcia, age 20. Catalina was a first-generation college student, blazing a trail for her family. She was passionate about education, dedicated to her studies, and filled with energy. She loved her family deeply and carried their hopes and sacrifices with her every day. She didn't just want a degree, she wanted to create change. Her journey ended in that classroom, just as it was beginning. 5. Daniel Parmenter, age 20. Daniel was the kind of guy who made you feel like you belonged. He was a business student, tall, athletic, funny, and generous. He loved sports, working for the student newspaper, and spending time with his girlfriend. In a haunting moment of heroism, Daniel shielded her with his body as the gunfire erupted. He saved her life and gave up his own. That single act, unplanned, instinctive, brave, said everything about who he was. The physical injuries were devastating. Bullet wounds, surgeries, lifelong trauma. But the emotional wounds ran deeper. Many survivors were later diagnosed with PTSD. Some couldn't return to school. Others never stepped foot in a classroom again. Parents were shattered. Friends became withdrawn. Professors carried guilt. The community bore a heavy silence. A year later, on the anniversary, the NIU campus held a memorial service, complete with candlelight vigils and the ringing of a bell for each life lost. One student said, "I survived the shooting, but a part of me stayed in that room. A part of all of us did." They were students, children, sisters, brothers, best friends, lovers. They never got to graduate, never got to live their dreams. But we remember their names. We say them out loud because they mattered. And in telling their stories, we begin to reclaim what was lost.
It'll always be a part of me, and it's always in my head. It does get easier as time goes on, but that scar is there forever.
Patrick Corellis of Chicago copes with surviving the shooting at Northern Illinois University by talking to other victims.
Talking about it helps because you just get all your feelings out there with people that have been through the same thing as you, and you just don't hold it in.
Patrick was a student in class at Cole Hall Auditorium during the shooting on Valentine's Day 2008. When the gunman reloaded, Patrick ran for the door.
I felt something hit me in the back of the head and I was bleeding. So I was holding my head. He shot again.
Paramedics rushed him to the hospital. He still has shotgun pellets lodged in his skull 15 years later.
The doctor said I was a few millimeters away from impacting any major nerve damage, so I got lucky with that.
5 students, Gail Dabowski, Catalina Garcia, Juliana Gahant, Ryan Mace, and Daniel Parmenter died in the shooting, and more than a dozen others were wounded. NBC5 Investigates found a federal report on the shooting determined NIU police arrived in less than a minute after the first 911 call. By then, the gunman had already ended his own life. Officers who responded to the classroom also found about a half dozen or more students who were sitting in their seats in shock.
I remember I froze. When it happened, when I was hiding, I was frozen.
Patrick says he understands why some of his classmates were frozen in shock during and after the shooting.
The gunshots keep going, and you're just like panicking, like, what do I do? What do I do? Things were flashing in front of my face, my family, my friends, my life.
Since that 2008 shooting, FBI statistics show active shootings across the U.S. have increased sharply, especially the last few years. From 2019 to 2020, there was a 33% increase in active shooter incidents, followed by a 52.5% increase from 2020 to 2021. After the NIU shooting, survivors heard from students at Virginia Tech.
We experienced what you did.
They had just gone through their own shooting the year before.
That really resonated with me, is having that support group, people that have been through what you did.
Ever since, Patrick reaches out to new victims to help them cope as mass shootings continue to happen across the U.S.
I just wish something could be done, and I don't want to keep having to keep talking to these victims over and over again and watch these numbers grow. I want the numbers to stop and everyone, not to ever experience.
A solemn ceremony today in west suburban DeKalb. People gathering on the campus of Northern Illinois University, marking the 15th anniversary of the shooting that killed 5 there.
The gunman later took his own life, and WGN's Julian Cruz joins us now from DeKalb.
Good evening. The university community honoring the 5 who were shot and killed and the 17 others who were wounded in that terrible attack 15 years ago to the day.
You do what you can to overcome it. For me, I've written a book. It's titled One Shot, One Life.
Shooting survivor Harold Ng writing a book to come to terms with the tragedy.
You could say that was kind of like a dream because, like I said, it happened so fast.
Ng surviving with a non-life-threatening wound, but the emotional toll for him harder to cope with.
Why did it happen? Like, you don't expect it to.
Coming back here on this day helps just to see people that went through it.
Patrick Corellis with other shooting survivors back at the memorial site on NIU's campus. The terrible memory of what happened here in 2008 still vivid in people's minds.
A guy kicks the stage door open, doesn't say a word, and just starts shooting at us.
Bells ringing at precisely 3:06 p.m., the very moment when gunman Steven Kazmierczak opened fire 15 years ago to the day, killing 5, wounding 17 others, the gunman then taking his own life.
I remember where I was sitting. I remember where I was shot, when I started bleeding.
Corellis in all the commotion, not realizing that he had suffered a wound to his head while escaping from Cole Hall as the gunman reloaded. On the campus of Northern Illinois University, Julian Cruz, WGN News.